breakout rooms that we can create. So this kind of, for us, is a bit tricky in a workshop session, but with this amount of people, I think it's manageable, and that sounds good. So we will do our best. We will split the session today in two parts. The first part will be 2-3 panelists that we invited, that we will discuss a little bit focused on the topic, and as well a little introduction by our side, by my side, from ARS BALTICA on the project itself, where we're standing with Culture for Climate, what the idea is, and then smoothly I'll hand over to my colleague Oleg Koefoed from Growing Pathways to moderate the interactive, hopefully as much as possible interactive workshop or discussion that we will bring you all, get you all involved. Just to start with, we have a chat function, and our idea was, since we don't have breakout rooms in the beginning, to use that chat, that everybody just writes into the chat who you are and where you're from, and if it's not too long, to just write a little bit why you're here, just so we have an overview of who's participating, and we can integrate this into our workshop session afterwards. And also I would like to introduce Lena, Jonas, and Zara as our panelists for today, that we will start sharing the idea. Really great that you joined in. There's three young people from the Baltic Sea region, from Schleswig-Holstein and from Denmark, and we will share upon our and your experiences to link to the topic. But since the whole workshop is framed within the Culture for Climate project, I would like to first give an insight by giving a little presentation on the project and where we're standing and what C4C is standing for. And for this, I will share my screen. And while I do this and while I present, it makes sense that everybody just puts into the chat the requested information about yourself, so we can play along with those informations as well when we largen up the discussion afterwards. So I'll try to share my screen, and I'll try to do it not too long, the presentation, but I think it's important to share what we're talking about in terms of Culture for Climate. So I'll try to share my screen, and I hopefully everybody then can see my screen. Please let me know. Let's see, it's like, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so we're talking about Culture for Climate. As you can see in the first picture slide, we are a seed money project. So we got some support by the seed money facility of the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. And this seed money allowed us to start and find about what we could do as an initiative project until the end of September. So we just finished our seed money phase. We will be going into a reporting phase now. Oh, there's some loud noise. Maybe somebody just didn't switch up the microphone. And I'll give a little insight. What does C4C stand for, Culture for Climate? And the strong idea behind it is nourished by experiences we had with other projects on, but it mainly stands for creating narratives and building bridges towards the society through the means of culture. Culture is a large word, and we can always define it a bit differently. When we talk about narratives, we mainly talk about culture being narratives through the arts, but it can be also culture linked to how we talk to each other, the way we behave amongst each other, the way, and culture is also redefined through different countries and backgrounds. I think we'll get back to this in our discussion. Also, culture is a very strong horizontal linking force, which the project also stands for. So it's something that is everywhere in society and links us up, whether it be language, whether it be where we come from, whether it be really the output in terms of art and culture in the sense that we produce. Then it's also linked to capacity building in the project. C4C has the idea also to share knowledge, how we can augment within cultural activities these bridges that can be built, or the narratives, or the way we produce those narratives. And then it's also standing strongly for joining forces, also in this horizontal linking aspect. Where do we come from with C4C and why this idea was born? And it's within the so far partner consortium. It was a lot of experience that we all had through culture being a real transmitter into society. So We have climate experts, we have artists, we have cultural networks, and so on within our consortium. But one thing was really clear amongst all of us, especially when it came to the climate experts and the political aspect, that politics very often stay, and also very strongly science stays very very knowledge-based, head-based, and that very often it lacks the transmitting aspect, the bridging into society, how to create the link that people understand, and from understanding or even feeling, sensing, you can change your behavior much better. So this also brought us, okay, such an initiative can augment the possibilities to create those narratives, augment the power of it, and really have a much stronger outreach into the CCI sector, and using the CCI sector also with its large outreach. I would like to give a little just insight of what power such narratives can create, and this is a very famous one by Danish Icelandic artist Olafur Eliasson, who has, amongst many other artworks that are very strongly linked also to climate issues in his work and sustainability, he has created the Ice Watch project, or the Ice Watch artwork, where he really tries to create this narrative into society, really in Copenhagen, or let it be in Paris, and there was many cities involved. He confronted the people with the pure feeling and sensing what it means that ice is melting, and this artwork really transmitted to the audience at that moment, oh wow, I am in the middle of this. It is not something that is happening far away, it's something we are all concerned with. And this is one example how those narratives can be created. And at this point I would like to share with you a little video where such a discussion or interview with Olafur was done through the Artist Climate Conversations. I just would like to share a bit of it, and please tune up your speakers, because it might be not strong enough to hear it well. I'd just like to share this at that point.
I have tried to work with climate issues in my art on various ways. I have worked with how do you actually touch the climate crisis? How does it feel physically if you could touch it? We know that the climate crisis can be very abstract, because generally it's a lot of scientists who gives us a lot of data, which is very important. Then we have the media communicating this data as kind of text or pictures or films and so on to us. And sometimes I wonder, does the media in fact touch us? I've also worked with, for instance, putting ice from Greenland in the middle of the street in Paris in a public space during the COP21. This specific project, Ice Watch, was a project where I put 12 blocks of ice in a circle in collaboration with a scientist, Lena Kruit. We took the ice from a Greenland glacier. It had fallen off into the ocean, where we picked it up and shipped it to Paris. See, now that's a project which very specifically was about, well, how do we make what the scientists and the heads of states tell us available for people so they can understand it in a second? And I'm very curious about the fact that we kind of know what the climate crisis is about. We sort of understand it intellectually, but it can still be very abstract when it comes to having a physical relationship with it. What's the consequences of our action can be a very difficult question to answer. So being exposed to inland ice from Greenland is, I think, quite an interesting situation, because it puts us in front of something which is quite literally disappearing very fast, the glaciers. We measured the carbon footprint, and it was 30 tons. 30 tons was released into the atmosphere because of taking the ice to Paris. I evaluated and I thought that is actually worth it, because 30 tons is the equivalent of taking a school class of kids to Greenland and back again to Paris. So I thought, well, a few 100,000 people will actually see the ice in Paris, and of course they will see the ice out of the context of Greenland. But in Paris it was amazing, because the ice suddenly became very touching, very emotional, full of sounds, full of magic. And in that way I thought the ice would really allow for a strong physical and emotional conveyor of the climate debate. And of course, what is very touching is to put your hand on the glacier. And what happens is that you go like, oh, this ice is very cold. This means that we have knowledge in our head, but physically speaking, we have not quite become as sensitive as we have been intellectually. And the question is, where does climate action come from? Does it come from intellectual knowledge, or does it come from physical experience? So with art or artworks, I think one can touch, one can touch people or touch the motivation in a different way than what the media does to us. So what gives me hope is that all the people in the world who has actually created the successes, the progress, the sort of industrialization that essentially led to the climate crisis, these are going to be the same people who's going to invent, create, and come up with solutions that can actually save the planet. So I'm full of hope that the brilliant mind of mankind is actually capable of solving this climate crisis.
Yes, so this little film says all those points made all together, how, in this case, visual art can create those narratives. And I like very much how Oleg Koefoed is able to put it on spot. So just to round up about Culture for Climate, the project, the initiative, where could it lead to and where we're standing? After the seed money phase, we are now about to create a project proposal that within this consortium and some more partners about to join in are creating a 4-pillar or 3-pillar, depending on which format we go for, project initiative platform. There will be a good practice platform within this project linked to collecting knowledge that is existing, like the one we have just shared. Then it's about capacity building, helping artists, but also the institutions to create and learn from each other on capacity building, meaning how can I do things better? How do other people do it? What is already existing? And out of this capacity building, also having a producing pillar in producing narratives within the project that we are developing that show that it's working, and that should also lead to a good building up the good practice platform further. And sure, it's a natural thing that the network goes along with this. We are for now a mix of artists, political networks, regional networks, cultural institutions, and climate experts. And in the phase right now, we're sorting out what, where to apply for with this bigger project and who will be really in the core partner consortium. So this is just for the next 1-2 months, the next steps. We're very far already with the structure and everything. And now we take other action in really describing more the content. So today, the session is one of quite many parallel things that are running alongside, and we are very grateful for being able to do this, to place the idea, to also seeing it as part of work in progress, and invite the audience and the people, you out there, to participate or also share maybe what you think, what you would like to contribute to, what you see in this project. We will discuss this later. We have a format developed called the C4C Coffee Talk. I would like to share some feedback. So we meet online in the morning very easily with a person from the Baltic Sea region and collect feedback with certain questions. And I would like to just share 3 of them. The later 2 being also from our 2 panelists, Lena and Jonas. The first one is from Guido Fröse, North colleague, whom I had an interview, and he said, rising sea levels are abstract, but the power of culture is to make it visible, to make it tangible and understandable. I think that in addition to environmental protection laws, we need to take people along so that everyone starts within themselves. That's the real strength of culture, and that's where we should invest. I think that's very strongly linked also what Oleg Koefoed said. I would like to go on. And then Lena, who's also sitting in our panel, she said, when I asked her, what would you wish upon for, or what would you like to call for help? She said, after the interview, if I could make a wish, it would be that people would understand how important every single person is. It's not about anyone to decide something. Everyone is responsible for everything. When everybody starts to understand this, that would be my biggest wish. And that, of course, people in politics start to understand that it's not about the money, it's about nature. That's from Lena Kruit during our coffee talks. Then the one from Jonas, who's also sitting here in our panel, we'll hear both of them talk afterwards in our discussion. He says, on the question, what would you like to call up on help for or wish? He said, I would wish for accountability. We have seen for many years now, report after report and promises after promises when it comes to climate action. For example, the Paris Agreement, what is the repercussion of not following it? What actually happens if a country says, no, we don't want to? Absolutely nothing. And I know it's a fantasy to say the UN should have the authority to punish countries if they are not following such agreements. And it is probably never going to happen, but that's exactly what we need. That's from Jonas as a closing up of the interview we had. The full interviews will be soon available also on our website. We are collecting one after the other. We've had already many of those. So far we are those institutions, and not institutions, partners within the C4C project. And I think quite some are along with us today. Oleg, who is co-moderating the second part with me, is from Growing Pathways. He's also partner in the project. And so it's a great bunch of people and we are moving forward. If you want to have any updates, contacts, please go to our website. There's a Culture for Climate within the project. You can see progress report and where we're standing, or get in touch with us. So thanks for until here for listening. And I hope you got a little insight in what C4C Culture for Climate stands for. I'll stop my screen sharing. I hope you could hear me. It was a bit, one feels pretty lonely presenting because you're not sure. So I'm not sure if everybody can hear it. I hope it came over. Great. So at this point now, we shift over to really give the floor and open up a little bit discussion amongst Lena, Jonas, Zara, and us from ARS BALTICA. And it's a very intimate round here. We are 11 people, but I would like to just quickly say, Lena, she is right now, as I can see, sitting in Kiel. Maybe it's good to open up your mic afterwards when you talk, but she's now sitting in Kiel in Meermanege, so you can actually see what she's doing. She's a circus artist. She's doing circus art, and it's really strong what she does, and is combining this with working with kids in schools and people to transform also knowledge purely from brain to physical experience, and integrating the sustainable and climate aspects in her work with those people. Great to have you here, Lena. And then we have Zara from ARS BALTICA. She's actually a colleague within ARS BALTICA, but, and that's also important, her background, she's a writer. So I said, hey, Zara, that's the place you also should be. It's not about only sticking to our work within ARS BALTIC, but it's also seeing how we bridge within our own background topics. So she's a writer, and she will feed in a little bit on the topics of literature or writing and climate or sustainable aspects. Great to have you here, Zara, and great that you do this along with us. And then we have Jonas Færgeman from Denmark, who we already know since a couple of sessions. Great guy who is strong on the topic of climate issues. And same with you. You're right now studying composing in Karlstad in Sweden. So there's also this bridging as being part of the Baltic Youth Platform, and really interested in politics and moving things forward. And great to have you here. And I think we're going to hear a bit more about all of your perspectives and backgrounds and knowledge and sharing. After this, now I would like to hand over to Oleg. I hope I wasn't too long, but I think this information is quite important to know in which framing we're moving. I'll hand over to Oleg now, my great colleague from Growing Pathways. He calls himself action philosopher. I like it every time I have to say it. Sorry, Oleg, but I like it so much because philosophy very often stays in your mind. When you put the word action to it, it seems like you have the strong wish and will also to say, no, let's try to put it into action. And that's part of this project and this idea to share amongst us. So I'll hand over to Oleg to introduce a little bit the way we are going to go today, and his idea of how to move forward this workshop. At the same time, I would like to see where we're standing with the information in the chat, if everybody has posted, and I guess Zara, Alisa, and Oleg, you kind of keep an eye on that as well. And we will integrate it into the next steps. So there will be a creative break in between, but it's a surprise. Let's see if this is going to work out later. But the first part now, let's discuss with our colleagues a little bit the topic culture for climate from their perspectives. So Oleg, take over and let's see where the discussion leads us, and then we go over into the bigger round. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Marcus. So I think there are things here that are a little bit improvised since first of all, we are not able to work in breakout sessions, and then as an extra invitation to improvisation, we are not 40 but 11. So in fact, one of the ideas that we had when we thought that we were 40 was that the chat is really important, because the chat is a place where we can continuously get information and ideas and thoughts and reflections from all of us. So please do use it. As I can see right now, one of the things that Marcus said to begin with was write a little bit about who you are. So if any of you have not done this yet, and I think if I see quickly, I could say that there are a couple of you who have not done that yet. I won't say any names, but those of you who haven't written anything about yourself, please use the chat to do that. Another reason to do that is that the chat is also a good place to save things, because when you save a recorded session in Zoom, the chat is automatically saved with it. So the chat becomes a document that we can share amongst us afterwards, just as well as the recording can be shared. So
there is a small problem. Just let me interrupt you 1 second. It is not possible to use the chat for all. So I can't post my chat to all. I can only choose one of you.
Okay, I have the same problem.
I know that half of you also are co-hosts. So if you all make up as co-hosts, perhaps that could work.
It seems to be a bug that I have the same problem, even though I'm a co-host. So I
would love to make everybody co-host, but that's not in our hands because we're not the host. So we became co-host because Paulina did so. So our hands are, so to say, bound, but maybe we can do it in a way. Unfortunately, not everybody can read it, but if you put in your chat, we're not so many people, maybe send it to Alissa.
Yes. Just wanted to say the same.
Okay.
And I'll post it to everybody.
Yeah. Exactly.
See, we improvise.
So send your information to Alissa only, and she can share it to everybody.
Yeah. Great. So we'll be bombarding. Anytime you have anything you're thinking about, anything you want to share, just send it to Alissa. And at some point she'll disappear out of the screen. Just be overwhelmed. Okay, so anyway, so that was one thing, and then apart from that, I don't want to say very much right now, because I would actually much rather let our it seems funny to call people panelists when we're 11, but it would be great to leave the floor for now to which one of you is actually starting? Marcus, have you said anything about anything and anyone in particular starting out of these three, or should we just see who raises his or her hand the fastest?
First step, raise hand. If there's no hand, then we just go random. I would do it that way. Who wants to start of you three?
Okay, then we'll just begin from the top. Now that's very random because Lena, you're the one that that is highest in my screen, so you're at the top. So I would love for you to take the floor and tell us a little bit about why are you here? You know, how did you get to this point? And tell us about the things that you do and how they relate to this bridging between climate change and culture and sustainability.
Yeah, nice. Then I will start, and I don't have to write a message to Alicia because you get to know me this way. I'm sitting in Kiel right now, as Marcus already said, and I'm a circus artist. So not all my job is being a circus artist, but I do it a lot of my time. And I try to connect circus arts with topics of sustainability. So in our shows, we use the topic of plastic a lot and deal with it. And we have a show with a fish that's, sorry, my English, I'm sometimes missing words. So we have a fish that it's full of plastic, and in the end it's throwing out plastic, and we create messages like this for our audience so they feel the message that we are trying to tell them. And we also have our workshops where we use some old materials with the children and try to show them this way how to deal with nature. Yeah, maybe that's for the beginning. Do you have any questions?
I remember one of the things that we met once before because Marcus and I were at the Northern Festival, where you were also present doing a show at the festival, and we were talking there. And one of the things that struck me was the way that you actually use bodies as a way to learn. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. For us in circus arts, most of the arts are about feeling each other and getting very close. For example, in partner acrobatics, you move together and then you can experience how important every single person is. Like if you're practicing a new trick together with two people, you most of the times need a third person to help you not to fall down. And so you see how important every person is in this trick. Even if you're not the one presenting something, you're the one who's saving the life of the other ones. So yeah, it's a very body, it's a body art.
And how do you make the bridge back then to sort of, I mean, I can make it abstractly in my mind, right? But how do you do it in your practice, making the bridge between this very direct, embodied shared practice here now on the ground, and then the bigger issues of sustainability or climate change?
In our courses, we talk about it. We just practice with the kids or also the adults, and then talk about it. Yeah, and what did you learn out of this? How can you transform it for acting sustainable together? So that's how we do it. And some of it, it's only about feeling that when you're practicing together in a group and you create this atmosphere of a group and the trust you have in between of the members, it's the same thing you have to feel towards nature. And I also have a circus course we practice outside in the forest. And that's even more connected to nature. So we juggle with the fruits we find on the floor, or we hug a tree in between and use the tree as a stabilizer for some acrobatic movements. So yeah, that's even more connection to nature.
And how do the people who were then part of this, do you know anything about how it influences them afterwards? Like how it changes their way of acting or behaving?
No, since we are a very young project, I couldn't make any long time studies about it. But I've heard from a lot of people watching our shows that they were like, wow, I've never thought about this the way you're presenting it. And I will try to change my plastic consumption or the behavior we use plastic. And yeah, let's see what we will get back from the people in maybe half a year, 1 year.
Yeah, Marcus.
Yes, I just would like to add one thing which I find very important here is that you are also working with children. And I think this is a strong part, as I can see from your work, to give this intrinsic access to a topic that is not very present maybe for the kids in the world in terms of feeling it, that they through the circus art get an entry into, first of all, living actions with other people, trying to create things together, but also being confronted, or not confronted is the wrong word, but being involved in the topic of sustainability in a very playful way. Is that right? That this is also a strong part, that those workshops are actually maybe a focus also of your work and you think to present it? Yeah. Cool. I just would like to add this because I think it's a strong part for bridging also into the future, because the young kids that are moving forward and have to go along.
Mostly about the young children who are interested in circus arts. Most of the adults are too scared and they are, no, it's new and I can't move this way and my children can do it. So of course we reach a lot of children, but also try to get the parents of them. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's extremely interesting. I've had this experience many times as well. if you have the adult and the child at the same time, the adults choose to push the child in front and say, my kid can do this, it's playful, it's good for them. And actually it would be just as good for the adult to do it. But yeah, it's a second step. Yeah.
Everyone should be playful.
Yeah, then the kids can teach their parents to be playful, if they can allow that. Great. So I really look forward to seeing also like in the longer run what happens both to you and your project as it moves along, but also to be able to follow some of the effects and the ramifications of the things that you're doing and how that influences people in their daily lives. That'd be really interesting to follow. Great, thanks. So thanks for now. Let's open up the floor a little bit more and pass the word to the next person, dripping down attention down on my screen. Nobody else can see this. I'm pointing at you now, Jonas. Jonas Færgeman, which is Danish for the guy who takes you over to the other side, you know? the one on the ferry. So Jonas, will you take us to the death side, or will you give us a more positive picture today?
Oh, well, what a fucking introduction. Thank you very much. That was amazing. Yes. Oh, okay. Well, I know which side I would want everybody to bring, and it's also the side that I'm working on to keeping, which is obviously the side of life. But I do have to admit that I don't know if it's my Scandinavian pessimism, but unfortunately I lack the optimism and outview that Lena has. Though I am somewhat jealous of that mindset, I wish I was able to portray it better. I guess working climate policies for about 5 or 6 years, it's kind of getting you know, it works its toll on your positive outcome outlook. So what I would say is the climate policy and climate crisis in general, I think is something that which we've known about for not only a few decades, but actually since the late 19th century. The first reports on the climate effects of climate action and CO2 in the atmosphere was brought out in scientific papers and newspapers around the 1878, I think it was some of the first reports, which is like 100 years before the first UN report on the climate issues. So it's one of the longest standing issues we've known, not only for all the people who are alive right now, but since we started actually like developing the way that we run our countries in the West in general. Therefore, it is saddening to see that a lot of the discussions on the matter is still aligned to the facts of the science, whether or not those are true. And even if we accept it, as luckily most of us do, and most of people in power they do, then it's discussion of money, which is sad, but obviously to some extent important. And then it's a matter of mostly pure lack of will to do something about it for the people in power generally. So while I do agree with some of the things that we have been talking about so far, I think that my outlook is about 99.5% depressing. Or bad. So I guess my vote is going to the dark side, or to the side of downfall. But I guess it's just because I'm on the same boat that everybody else is in this world. When it comes to saving our planet, I like to point our focus a bit more to humanity and the animals and everything organic on a living thing on a planet. Because one thing that's very important is the planet is going to outlive us and be fine without us. Like the way that we are hurting the planet is not really something that we should even talk about. The thing that we are doing is we're hurting our own way of life, and we're hurting animals' way of life, and we are changing the way that we can actually prosper and live and have good lives. And so for the sake of humanity and for everything good we stand for, we have an ethical responsibility to do something about it. And in this aspect, I think when it comes to our ethical responsibilities and humanities in general, I think it's very necessary for art and culture to have its say in this regard. So yeah, I actually don't really know, or like what I wanted to say, but now I just took your presentation and just started talking. So I don't know if you actually had a question for me, or if you just wanted to talk about my last name.
Well, I think you grabbed that and caught it very eloquently and very elegantly. And maybe if you can say a little bit about your own practice as it is right now to those of you who don't know you.
So very, very shortly, I've been working with climate policy for a few years, about 4 or 5 years. And I've been working mainly in the youth aspect of it. That is not to say that my main focus has been youth, but my focus is to represent or be part of or actively empower the voice of youth when it comes to climate crisis and policies in the Nordic region and the Baltic region in general. I've been doing that by chairing different organizations which have had a youth focus or being exclusively youth-led, which is the important part. I'm turning to 30 now in 2 months, so I guess that's time is running out, but that's just a fact. And then I've been working with climate policy in a national and European level as well when it comes to that. So I guess my main focus has been so far mainly policy making. But as Marcus mentioned, I also work as study as a composer, and I work as an organist in a church. And music is a bigger aspect of my everyday life than the climate is. But it is very difficult to be a person passionate about anything in this world and not care about the climate crisis and lack of action. So I guess it's just a matter of speed, a matter of need to continue working with the climate action in the capacity that I can. So I guess what I'm doing right now is I am a part of the Baltic Sea Youth Platform, mainly led by Lena Kruit, who's also in the Zoom call, and that has opened up great opportunities to me to participate in panels like such as these. But I do work on a freelance basis and mainly focus on doing my music studies, and then I participate in the climate stuff like this whenever I think that I'm taking part of something which could actually have an effect. Which I'm happy to say that I think that C4C and the setting in general could become something very, very interesting. So I'm happy to impactful. So I'm happy to join and lend my aid in whatever capacity I can.
Just a quick question. I mean, I completely understand sort of the overall and organizational aspects of this. I was just. I became curious that there have been a number of studies over the last many years of how being a performing artist, and especially a creative, like for instance a composer rather than only a musician, how that influences people in their working life, and there are a lot of positive things to say about that. How do you feel that influences the work that you do? I mean, are you saved somehow by your practical composing and performing part? Does it help you in everyday life? Is this something that you can throw back into the political sphere, or is there a wall between them, or a gap?
No, it's completely useless. I mean, it's just me sitting writing string quartets does exactly fuck all to the climate crisis. But something that it actually does is that it makes me, it has a therapeutic effect on me. So after I sit and talk about the climate policy with people in power, mostly I talk with politicians about climate, and it's an is an infinite pool of depression energy that leads after these kind of conversations with people who don't really want to do anything. And I guess after such a meeting, it's nice to just sit back and write something for the piano. That's great. So it helps me. But no, when it comes to my what I have been doing that is not directly associated with climate stuff, that is helping me with the climate stuff, I would say it's my degree in philosophy, which I also use when it comes to my music stuff. I do like to focus everything I work around to the when it comes to focus it on the experiences and the ethical ideas of mankind, whether it being pure ethics in form of philosophy, or being aesthetics, both in philosophy and in music. So I guess music is not something I make use of, but it's a natural continuation of the values that I hold very dear to myself and to my being, which I also portray mainly when it comes to my climate work. But since I'm also not as a professional as Lena is when it comes to my art, it's also a harder to bridge this in that aspect, I guess. But I would very much want to in the future to be more intertwined and to link it more. Yes.
Great. Marcus, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think it's interesting what Jonas just said, because, and first of all, I totally understand the action-driven part. You say, okay, concrete influence, no, the music doesn't help me. But I think there's one thing, but you mentioned it in the end, so my hand was already up. But still, I think this resilience part, that when it comes to dealing ourselves with creativity, in this case with music, with composing, or with arts, expressing ourselves, has, in my opinion, but you said it in the end, quite a strong impact on ourselves. If we make the topic part of our art or not, that's another thing to the outside, but to purely integrate the creativity in our daily, I would call it rituals, has a strong influence. And I think you said it, but still I think it's not to be underestimated, because I think that's a big lack in society, that people are we're too much in our minds very often, but the creativity output to being creative has in the end, in my opinion, a strong influence. And it's also been proven onto our actions. So, but you said that, it's not a critic into your part, but I think it's something I would like to point out, because I know it myself also very well as a musician, and I think Lena knows it as well. So I think it's a strong part also to mention and focus on within C4C, that it's also something that drives us, because we are also all individuals that can support our resilience in daily life. But it's tricky when it comes to communicating it outside. I totally agree.
Yeah, and also when it comes to your second part of the question, Oleg, you mentioned, you asked, does it save me? And I guess to a certain extent it does. It saves aspects of me, I guess, important aspects. I would imagine. It doesn't save us from the flooding, but it does maybe save my well-being and my sanity in very important ways. And also, to just follow up very quickly on what you mentioned, Marcus, we talked about this in our coffee talk, and a bit more on the panel we had before that. And it's my very, very and I'm not trying to say it's not my view, because it's a common aesthetic view when it comes to aesthetics. Also, excuse me, is art and expression of emotions through art mainly. It is it's a way of having a rhetorical tool set that we aren't using in a more common way when it comes to our way of dealing with politics and economics and every socio-economic discourse we have in our society. Also, just saw on the slideshow with the ice cubes, and I remember I saw a brilliant, I think it was in Berlin, a happening where people had a noose around the neck tied to a pole above them, and they were standing on ice cubes. And of course, when it was melting, they would die. But obviously, they went off before they actually died. But you just get the point. And we have is very, very, very evident. Not only when we can view it like empirically, but actually it's just factual. True that people respond emotionally very, very much stronger to things that they do. They are sparked into action in a more aggressive manner when there is the emotions that are triggered instead of their rationality and their knowledge, which is what we see. It's not like we have any more people left in our societies here in the Baltic Sea region who don't care, or associations who don't know about the climate crisis. We have very few people who are in disbelief, but it's not because of a lack of knowledge, lack of understanding and gathering data and science, facts, and all that stuff. We got that. We lack the emotional connection, and we see that happening when people do travel around the world to see the consequences of the climate crisis, which affects vastly different proportions. We are in a very good region here in the Nordics to mitigate some of the effects, but it's true that once we actually spark the emotional response, we see people have a different approach to it and a different outlook, and that's important, and that's something that arts and culture in general can do in an incredibly more efficient way than pure argumentation, and that's also what we see when we see campaigns about well, anything we should have care for and empathic reaction to. Mostly it's made through pictures and not through articles. It's easier to feel remorse for people affected by the climate crisis if we see pictures of it happening rather than just reading statistics of death numbers. It's just two very different reactions, and I guess that is why I am so interested in just seeing what role can art really play in this our discourse. is it's very, very important when it comes to persuasion, but also just to expanding on the human condition in general, and our knowledge of it, and our feeling of it and sensing of it. Sorry, I'm going to stop talking now because I'm just going to continue further.
No, it's great to feel also the. I mean, in what you're describing, there are definitely openings, right, and pathways and directions that we can take. But of course, we don't know exactly how we can bring the elements that you're introducing here to a point where they have a decisive influence on a bigger scale. So, which is also maybe what you were saying in the beginning, right? That we don't know yet how to change that into a solid optimism. Yeah. So great, thanks a lot. I think we'll move on, and thank you very much for this so far. And I will pass the word. I will be nice and not introduce you in any really strange and tricky ways, like talking about going to the dark side or anything like that. But simply say, Zara, could you tell us a little bit about who you are? I mean, you wrote something in the chat. I saw that before. But if you look at how did you get here in relation to the topic that's shining so nicely behind you about culture and climate?
Okay, so hi. I already wrote in the chat. I work at ARS BALTICA, who is hosting this session, and I'm also a writer. And you cannot make much of a living as a writer in my level, so I'm working at ARS BALTICA, but I really like working there. So it's not just just some slavery job. It's cool. I also publish a literature magazine together with my colleague Elisa. This one. Oh, no, okay, you can. I will maybe set back my background so I can just show some stuff. Okay. Ooh, what is going on? Okay, so this is the magazine I publish together with Elisa. And yeah, where to start? I really like, or no, I don't like writing about climate change, but or about climate crisis, but I do sometimes because I mostly write fiction, I would say. And for example, I wrote this little book. And as you can see on the cover, which a friend of me made, you can see a train and there's a thunderstorm. And I don't know, I wrote a lot about thunderstorms in the passing years because this is one of the effects of climate change, which are already present now. And I always build them in the background because I use them as some kind of effects of reality. So because if you are writing and you have a story and maybe have it printed in a book and pass it to another person, you make some kind of contract. So the person knows, okay, this is the story, I'm going to kind of believe everything which is in it. And I think it's important to maybe just have the state of reality we have now in also the stories. But in this very story, there are two thunderstorms which are crucial for the things that are going on. And the main person in the book thinks it's maybe some kind of destiny because they are always getting across her plans, and destiny in this case is just climate change. And yeah, so this is my approach somehow. And what I don't want to do with literature is giving the readers just kind of tendencies what to do, because I think there are so many other people who already have good things to say about climate change and what to do. And I just like to maybe create unrest in people with just dropping, okay, this is my everyday life. Oh no, there's a thunderstorm, and people can just be some kind of disrupted and then make something up it from themselves, whether it is buying bamboo toothbrushes or maybe start a revolution. So I just like to kick it off in my texts. So
Marcus, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just thinking because when you were talking to Jonas before, you mentioned also Jonas mentioned the lack of power in terms of transmitting when it comes to words, because when it's linked to facts, it can be very reduced to, you know, just knowledge driven. But there's also the writing, and that I find really interesting, and that would be my question towards Zara, the writing as a form of art, meaning if there is an intrinsic part, if somebody writes in an artistic way and that is touching and brings you, for me, sometimes we like flying into another world and not realizing that this world has a strong influence when you go there through reading. So my question would be, how are you, and if so, how you are reaching, if it comes to that topic or in general, does literature, when you write, from your point of view, have that power to really bring us somewhere that in the end, when we come out of that, let's call it space where we've been, it influences our daily life? And I mean, I would say yes here, but I would like to hear from you as a writer linked to the topic. Is that something that is discussed and seen when it comes to the writing scene? I know you've been to a conference a couple of weeks or last week ago where that was probably the topic. And could you give us a little insight on this? Because I think that could be a strong link when it comes to the art of writing in this topic.
Yeah, I've been on a conference pretty recently about, I don't know how to really translate it into English, about write literature in the wrong system, which is really a Adorno-y kind of saying. So relating to there's no right thing to do in the wrong system. I don't know how the real translation of this aphorism is. This was a conference about, I think the people hosting it were not really from literature science, but from social sciences, and there were also writers, and we were talking a lot about how literature can literature change something, and I think they didn't really come up with this one solution, but what I found really interesting is that there was not so many topics about ecology being touched, but a lot about class. So, which I was kind of delighted, because everybody is talking about, okay, we need to change our consume. People need to buy sustainable stuff, but I think, okay, not everybody can go vegan and buy sustainable stuff, because we live in a very unjust system, and there is no, unfortunately, there's no luxury for everybody, which I really find sad. So, and yeah, I don't really have a solution how this maybe can touch within literature, but I think there have been texts which could give some kind of direction or change things in the people for a long time. So my first experience with literature that has really changed me was when I was in school, and we were reading Georg Büchner, Wojciech, which was has really given me some kind of political view for the first time in my life, because it was not about Greek gods and big tragedies where people fall in love that shouldn't be in love, but it was about a poor person struggling in life, and it was really having an impact on me. And I think this is what literature can do. It can just give you different perspectives. And while I think there is literature too, which can say, okay, we need to do this particular action, but I think maybe the less specific but more I don't know, maybe metaphoric texts are sometimes stronger, because you have more space to really have your own thoughts within it. So I hope you got my point. It was maybe kind of confused. So
no, I think it wasn't confused. Just a quick remark from my side. I think when you said the perspective change, that's a strong thing. I think those moments in life when we can change perspectives, that's where we really move and we can take different decisions. Great, thank you.
It reminds me of two things. One is the collaboration that we've had in Growing Pathways with a company called Cora, who are a virtual reality producing company. So we've been making work for Climate KIC, the Knowledge Innovation Center related to climate under the European Commission, blah, 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 and so on. So we've been experimenting with how to use different methods, including virtual reality, as ways to prepare people to think in a different way about climate change and become more active. And one of the things that keeps stepping forward is this perspective change, right? That you get a perspective shift, and that there's the perspective shift itself, because it's not intellectually driven. It's driven by an affective, a physical, a bodily, and an emotional trigger, which is what happens when you use these techniques. Then it transposes you to another place, and you get ready in a way that can be used, abused, misused in many different ways. But if we put it in front of the right horse, which of course is the one that we're driving, then it's a very interesting way to work, right? Yeah, and the other thing that
sorry, I'm jumping in. I should have lifted my hand.
No, go ahead.
That's super important point where we're right now, because I think that's the red line going through. It's this thing of opening doors in different ways, different perspectives, and that's also where I remember with Jonas, when we were discussing about the definition of culture, that it's probably, it helped me a lot, because it was very strong from your side. You said, but we have to know what we're talking about when we talk about culture. And I think it's super, since then, for me, it's very clear every time to take a definition once we talk about it. And now this shows it in a nice way. We have music, we have literature, but we have also this question of where's the red line? Where are those perspective changes? And I think that's a real core issue, that every time there's a little perspective change we can go into if we are willing to, and that's very important, I think. But to open it up, it's through creativity, because it's the intrinsic entrance, and that's, I think, the red line also when it comes to Culture for Climate, and also our responsibility to answer this question: what are we talking about when we talk about culture? In what moment? I think that I take very strongly with, and I'm always grateful to you, Jonas, to really that you put strong, because it's important. And I think, I just wanted to share this, because I think that's the red line we should really keep in hands when we're talking here, and we do. It's great. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. The other thought that I had was that it reminded me of Knausgård, the Norwegian writer, whose latest novel, Morgenstjerne, the Morning Star. I don't know if it's translated in English yet. I'm very lazy. I'm reading it in Danish. I should read it in Norwegian, but anyway, it was the first one I could get my hands on, and it's one of these absolutely incredible novels where you have a disaster happening. And it doesn't ever say anything like, this is climate change that is happening to us. It's not moralizing in any way. It's just the disaster is somehow influencing the lives of a number of different people in a Norwegian town on the coast. And they don't understand it, and they don't understand what's going on, and they don't know how to deal with it. And they're constantly trying to hold on to the lives that they have. And it just shows this in many micro ways how this changes their perspective without them actually being willing to accept that this happens. So yeah, a full recommendation from here of Knausgård. Give me 2 seconds, I need to open my door. I have a son knocking on my door.
Fantastic. Changing of perspectives in life, I love it. And I'll take over at that point a little bit, and I think talking about this red line also brings us to a little moment that we will share afterwards. I just also say this into the direction of Lena, because, and actually, Jonas, very spontaneously, is there a piano left or right side of yours? I was just thinking.
Not right now, but I have my own apartment. I'm at my mom's place.
Yeah, because I feel a little, not sorry, but I feel a little bit, oh man, I didn't have this in mind. That you are also so strong into music. I was just taking over a little bit, Oleg, and to saying also towards Lena, I think you can decide on your side, Oleg, but I think when the shift is, because we're not such a large group, and it feels to express. I mean, I'm a bit sad, because I thought we going to have more audience? I have to be honest. There was numbers circulating, and somehow we are amongst us, but somehow maybe this we can share afterwards how we can scale up still. But nevertheless, we are as we are. We know in each moment we make the best out of it. It's great to have this group here. So since it's not so large, the group, I asked myself at what moment we maybe should shift into a little bit artistic part to share this. And asking you, Oleg, the plan for the workshop interactive session, how are we going to enlarge now? What's the next step? Should we do it now? Or should we wait a little bit? Let me know, because I would need to prepare 2 seconds for that. I'm just, and also Lena would like to know. So,
so the plan, the original plan was that I was going to say something now for 5 minutes, and then in the end of that, we then shift into a more open discussion based on a couple of pointers more, and based, of course, on all the things that we've heard so far. But I mean, we can also, this has also been quite intensive, I feel, on my side. So I think my intuition would be that we should get up, walk around, or jump around, or stand on your hands for a couple of minutes, and then we come back, and Marcus and Lena give us a little artistic intermezzo. And then I give a little mini talk, and then we have the open discussion. How does that
so fantastic? It's so fantastic working with you, because that's exactly what I felt, what we should do, and I let you express it so we can share it. Fantastic. So let's stand up, let's move a little bit, and then we do this very spontaneous artistic intervention, which is not at all prepared, not at all rehearsed, and I have no idea what's going to happen. The only thing we need to know is that Lena is going to be seen, and I don't necessarily need to be seen, that we have to solve in terms of focus. So let's get up, move a little bit, and take like a minute. Maybe Lena, we can do a little workout with you. let's get up,
you can join me warming up for a minute, doing some.
Stand up. What should we do? Jonas, are you already standing? No.
Yeah, you can just stand up and then move whatever you can move.
It's so funny. Everybody's turning off screens at that point. I know people are.
Yeah. I think I might use this opportunity to grab some more coffee.
And then maybe go down to your feet. Feel the ground with your hands and your feet. Then just jump a little bit. And shake everything that you're able to shake. Yeah, I don't know if you want to wake up even more. I have to warm it up a little bit more. Do whatever.
All right. Cool. I'll get a glass of water and I'll be back in 1 minute.
Yeah.
Voilà. So. Everybody back. Oleg is still in the garden picking apples.
Yeah, who knows how to pin me?
That's probably, let me see how that is done.
I've just pinned you. I don't know if it really works.
I think everyone can pin me at his own because I'm not
okay. Yeah, I pinned you very much.
Okay, I will just pin me too so I can see how high I'm allowed to climb so you can still see me.
Okay.
Well, okay, everybody has to go on this. Okay. So Oleg, just a quick question from our side. Shall we do a little intro now, or would you like before doing your presentation, then we do it? What would you prefer?
Your intermezzo?
Yeah.
Now.
Okay, I'll grab my cello and let's see what happens. And Lena should stay pinned. Everybody should be muted, not me. And I hope when I play, I don't become the main picture. So I'll need a second. I can do this here.
Let's see what happens.
Hey, it's working. You are now in my full screen.
Yeah, here too, so I think it works.
Give me some second, I need some colophony. Everybody back. Let's have some groovy. Okay, Lena, this is a premiere. We've never done this, and I have never done it with a circus artist. No, I did once. It's not true, but it was different. So. You see. Lena, you're disappearing off the screen. Now you're back in. Woo! Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks to you. That was fun. I didn't know how high I was allowed to climb.
Cool, super. So much fun. We should do this more often.
In real life.
Yeah, absolutely. And we integrate Jonas as well.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right, let's go on. I'll just put my chat away 1 sec.
Okay, absolutely fantastic. So everybody, you have now witnessed a world premiere of an interactive, interspatial, and interartistic performance.
One thing I love about this is because it's improvised, it will never be like this again. It's once.
Yeah.
That's what I like very much.
So it's not only a performance, it's a premiere. It's actually a once in a lifetime. Yeah, this will never happen again.
This is just for the other 40 who are not here. They missed something.
Of course, it's recorded, so in that sense, it will actually.
Oh shit! On. Oh yeah, missed. I didn't think. Luckily, I didn't think about that. Okay.
Okay, so on my agenda, I have that at this point I'm gonna throw in a little. I think Marcus and I call it kind of an inspirational note, a small comment based on the experience that I have from a bunch of different contexts on the relation between culture and climate, and then try to pass that on to a little quick, also given the time that we have, a little quick pitch in relation to how to structure the conversation for the next half hour. So I'll try and give you that now, and I'll just try and share my screen and see. Can you all see a greenhouse?
Yes, with some black spot in the middle. Oh yeah, no, it's fine.
With okay, there are some logs in the middle. So yeah. So this greenhouse is the first version of the Dome of Life. So it's a greenhouse. It's a little dome that I have created with a bunch of different partners in the middle of a neighborhood in Copenhagen, in a dorm, actually the biggest dorm in the Nordic countries. It's not very full of nature, as you maybe can see, but there are trees around, and in the middle of this we have planted this dome. This is just an example of an interactive way of acting. So so the first comment that I had was this. When I try to understand the relation, or one of the many ways that you can understand and talk about the relation between climate and culture, sorry, my computer was saying that it was going to run out of power in 3 seconds, so now it's not. So one of the, if you start in the bottom where it says climate, and then follow the stream down the hillside, which is one of the natural things that climate does to us as humans or as living beings, is that it tells us, it gives us a conditioning through the place that we're in, what I call the raw place, like this hillside in northern Norway. That of course I can choose to try to go up the mountain instead of down the mountain, but there's an inclination that is offered to me by the conditioning of the climate itself that says, this is follow the water, basically, is what the environment here is telling me. If you do like the water, you will find an easier way than if you try to work your way upstream like a salmon. Unless you actually are a salmon, of course. And the other, then if we move upwards, then one of the other things that the climate offers us, of course, is this sometimes extremely stressful and very existentially threatening aspect of time that has a tendency, as we know from a lot of different sciences, to move in only one direction. That time is actually an irreversible structure that the climate gives us, which, especially in these days, becomes more and more evident to us with the way that the elements around us are changing. So what is being offered to us a gradual recognition of whatever we want to call it. We can agree or not to call it the Anthropocene, but if we just say like the understanding of the term Anthropocene is just that we are in an era where the way that humans influence the climate is in a way that where the human factor is a maybe stronger factor than at least most other factors that are present in the planet right now. Not to say that nothing else can happen, but that's where we are. And altogether, these different influences on our culture brings us to a point where we start to question in a very fundamental way, like what is happening in some of the literature that Zara was talking about, and a place like Knausgård's novel and so on, that we start to question who we are, but also what we are and what it even means to be, right? So we come to a point where we almost lose a sense of our own being in the world, and if we're to talk about being able to act and change and try to reverse this or lead into a more positive direction, then this is of course an extremely dangerous place to be. So it brings us to a point where if we move to the other side, when we start this journey, we're in a place where our culture is being decomposed. We lose a sense of being part of a bigger, meaningful, embracing wholeness, and we see stronger and stronger symptoms like loneliness, depression, and so on. And the positive side of that, if you could say that there's a positive side to worsening climate change and a growing state of depression all over the globe, then the positive side of that is that we have a still stronger tendency among many people, maybe especially the young generations, to start searching for home and to try to find alternative ways to live, alternative places to live, and alternative ways to relate back again to the climate that we're in and to nature. And this then leads to a bunch of different phenomena like migrations and not only like climate migrations, involuntary migrations, which we of course see more and more, but also migrations as expression of a search for better places to live. This happens to animals, of course, and to all other creatures on Earth, but it also happens to humans. And as we do this, we have this kind of reawakening of a sense of memory that, for instance, if I move into this place for the first time, the one in the background in this picture, then I might not think that to begin with, I might not have a memory, or I don't think that I have a memory of this place because I've never been here before. But when I start moving into it, I actually have the possibility, and this happens in practice, to reactivate a memory that was deeper than what I thought. So it becomes a reframing of who we are when we start to become more experimenting, and culture is one of the most important driving forces in that reframing, re-embodiment of a shared memory. And then, of course, since we're talking about loneliness, then one of the most important elements of that is the we factor. So the necessity of sharing, of having experiences in common, and exploring these sometimes very mysterious and dangerous or insecure pathways into a new relation to the environment, and this calls for a sharing and calls for a sense of, or even techniques or socialization cultures that teach us how to be we in a new way. So one of these that I want to throw into this place is what we've started to call pollination in our little group. We even formed what we call the Pollination Academy as a place where you can learn gradually through a lot of different experiments to pollinate. So just to set the frame for what that is and how we'll use it today. This is what we often think about where we are, right? This is maybe one of the things that kind of leads to the kind of pessimism and depression that you feel, that this is what the state of the world, and the only thing that we can do is this, right? So this would be our normal reaction to say, okay, we have a crisis, we have a problem. The standard operating procedure in this case, even in an operating room. So it's no coincidence that I've used this picture, but we try to go back to what we know as the standard operating procedure, which we would use, for instance, if we had a patient coming into an intensive care and operating room, then it's very important that everybody in this room knows exactly what to do. Everybody has a very well-defined function. Everybody knows what it means when one person says one word like scalpel, or whatever you say nowadays, where real scalpels may be less and less important, but and that everybody acts exactly on time, right? So everybody knows when what is supposed to happen, and even though you're dealing with a living being, it's still treated like you have to do everything in the right order and at the right time. Then there's a better chance to have a successful operation. And then, of course, very important that you remember after you're done with all of this, you remember to close after operating, right? And preferably without leaving any of those wonderful tools that are on the table inside the patient when you're done. So once you're done operating, you close off and you say, okay, that's that, right? And probably this is about as far as you might get from the condition that we're in, right? So this is practically, it's not useless, but it's just very dangerous to think about climate change as a standard operating procedure to a well-known problem, because we don't have any standard operating procedures and it's not a well-known problem. We've never been here before, and it only gets worse every day. So then what happens if you try to say, well, could we be a little bit more like this little creature? What would happen if we go back and use this idea of pollinating? So here are 6 principles there are only 2 on the screen. Here are 6 principles of pollination, and I'll translate them into actually a series of words, headlines. So the first headline in the first principle of pollination is pollinators are not at war. So it doesn't help to look at, we had this a lot, for instance, during the COVID crisis. There are a number of state leaders who said that we are now at war. Not only the French, because the French always say that, but in general, there were many leaders who said this is a war situation. We're not fighting. So we hear a lot about fighting climate change or fighting pandemics, etc. So a pollinator is not at war. A pollinator is trying to meet a problem, but the solution is not to go to war. The second principle is that the most important qualities are the quality of listening. If you look at yourself like a butterfly, then you're a very vulnerable creature. And you better listen all the time, because otherwise somebody will eat you, squash you, churn you, burn you, whatever, right? So you have to listen, you have to sense, and very importantly, everything that you meet is a source of knowledge that can help you remember for the next time that you get in a situation that is similar to it. So principle number 2 is to listen, sense, and remember. Principle number 3 is to connect to other pollinators. The 3 women that we see here are working on creating a saffron farm on the top of an opera in Paris. So obviously it would be completely ridiculously impossible for each one of them to do this alone. But if they all work together, all the people living in the neighborhood come together as a community and connect to each other, then they have a better chance of succeeding. And very importantly, they also have to connect, of course, to all the conditions that are present in this particular place that they're trying to create a difference in. So it's about connecting to each other, but it's also about receiving from the environment that you're in and trying to share with everyone around you everything that you're connecting to and everything that you're receiving. So there's a huge need for possibilities to share information amongst us as we move along. And then there's a 4th principle, which I call nurturing common soils, which is both to be understood very literally, like in this case. If you don't understand the soil that you're working with, there won't be any flowers. And there's a global soil crisis, especially in cities, that is very important to address. But there's also, of course, a metaphorical sense to this, which is that we need to be able to go under the surface and understand some of the root problems that we have in the structures, the institutions, etc. The big biodiversity report last year, the Desgupta report, the Desgupta review, had as it's one of its most important points that we that one of the biggest problems that we face globally is an institutional problem. You might even say that it's a cultural problem, right? And that is about nurturing the common soils to to be able to grow new patterns of action amongst us. Principle number 5 is expressed in this relation between people, that which in this case is a picture from a performance by the Danish group Sisters Hope, who just started a 5-year on-site performance experiment called Sisters Home, that I recommend strongly that you go and see if you're in Copenhagen. This principle is basically the principle that in order to be able to connect to each other, we can fruitfully consider each other from a service perspective. That if you, it's not only about sharing with others how you're feeling, it's also about connecting to others in a way where you're constantly trying to be open to ways in which you might serve others in the problems that they have. And then the last principle, which is important as a pollinator, as a butterfly, metaphorically speaking, that the more pollen we have, the more life. And this goes back to this point about the operation and the standard operating procedure. There's an expression which in Danish is called rettidig omhu, just in time, you might say, which operates from the idea that if we have the exact amount of action that we need in the exact amount of information that we need, then everything will be fine. But that's not where we are. We're in a situation where we need much, much more. So we need to experiment all the time, micro-experiment all the time. And culture is perfect for that, because that's actually built into a lot of different cultural practices. That the act of practicing in art and culture is an act where you do things again, and you produce actually millions of experiences before you get to a point where you perform. And even when you're performing, you're still producing, in a sense, another prototype, another prototype. So there's a principle here, which is the principle of excess, basically, that the more pollen, the more life, because most of the pollen is going to go to another purpose than what we thought. So when we bring these together, here comes something very, very well known and very standard almost. They've been around for now 5-6 years, right? The 17 development goals. The only problem, there are many problems with them if we look at how successful we are in terms of reaching these goals by 2030. But that's one story. Another experience that I have had has been in a lot of different contexts, trying to work, for instance, with Danish municipalities or European organizations on how to implement these 17 goals, that they're very difficult to implement in everyday life because their goals are so huge and so vast and so far-reaching, like ending poverty. Like, how do I end poverty in my everyday life? And the WHO, the World Health Organization, actually offered us a tool for this 4 years ago. They made a report on how to try to create healthy cities in a sustainability context. So they actually invented not the 6 Ps, but the 5. They had forgotten about place, which is funny when you're writing a report about cities. So they introduced the 5 Ps of people, participation, peace, prosperity, and planet as a way to translate the complexity of the 17 goals into 5 principles. And then we added the 6 P of place, and we turned this into a process tool that we've been experimenting with a number of different institutions and people and communities, and start to see that it works because it comes closer to our everyday life. So you actually already know these, because I've already mentioned these in the 6 principles that I gave you before, as the 6 principles of pollination. So
sorry to interrupt, Oleg. Just we have 10 minutes, and we are going to be kicked out. We can't.
Oh wow!
Just so
great. Okay. So you can see. Thanks. I was like thinking, okay, we'll just go 5-10 minutes over time, but of course we won't, right? So I'll just show you these, right? So you can see, and you can always see this in the screen at some other point. But basically, what I went through with the 6 principles are the principles that are lying inside these 6 Ps of place, of people, of participation, of peace, prosperity, and planet. Another way to put it is peace as the handling of paradoxes in leadership, and place as the sense, the ability to be in sense of place, and the ability to bring in people or living beings, whether they are human or not, the capacity of participation, the formats that we use to be able to increase participation as much as possible. And then prosperity as the soils and the systems that we create in order to grow new ways of new economies, new ways of spreading prosperity across the world. And then finally, the excess needed to be able to work with sustainability on a global scale. So the small exercise that I want to give you based on everything that you've heard so far, and I had two questions for you. So I think maybe we can start with this question, and then I'll save the other question for afterwards. So my question for you right now is, you just heard like a monster speed talk from my side, and maybe you're just totally confused, but maybe just think about these 6 principles and these 6 ideas of prosperity, planet, peace, people, participation, and place. And intuitively, where would you see yourself? Where is your point of departure? Where is your base in relation to the work that you do? Wonderful. I've been kicked off. That's great.
You still can see the slide, but there's like...
I can see the... Oh, I haven't been kicked off. Okay,
no.
Thanks.
No, you're still here.
Okay, so now I just
we have to be careful with time now.
I know, I'm just trying to find my way back here. Okay, there you go.
Ah, there we are.
Sorry. All right, so a quick 5-minute reflection on this. Take the word and
put it in the chat,
or take the word and put it in the chat. If you can, share it with everybody, and if you can't, share it with Elisa, and she will, quick as a machine gun, or quick as a group of events, an anthill, fast as an anthill. She will spread it into the comment chat. Where do you see yourself?
Oh, it's difficult to choose.
Just choose intuitively. And remember, there are no right and wrong. You know, there are no statistics. There are no right and wrong answers here.
What were the options again?
The options are place, people, participation. Okay, so just to...
Oh, you're frozen. Wow. Everything comes together. You have been frozen, Oleg? Climate change? No, now you're back. No. Well, so I'll take over a little bit at that point. Are you back in? Can you hear us?
Chris, yes?
No, we didn't hear you. You were frozen. Now you're back.
Sorry. Ah, that's why Lena was not...
No, oh my goodness. So Oleg was telling us about his super fast fiberglass connection, but it doesn't seem to work. So let's maybe try to find a wrap up at that moment. And it's a shame Oleg is gone. Maybe you switch over to your other net. But seeing the time,
yes.
Maybe let's try to find a roundup from your side.
Mm-hmm. Good. So sorry for this technical spoof happening over here. So
C'est dommage.
most of what you've heard today?
Now you were gone again.
Oh,
Didn't
great.
hear.
So my question is, what inspires you the most of what you have heard today? And then please take the word from me and anyone.
You know, guys, I would say,
so that you're not dependent on my connection.
Exactly. Let's try to put it in the chat. We write in the chat what inspired us most today, and then we take it from there. We have more other places and moments, and we will learn how to structure this a bit different in terms of time. And should we put it in the chat just in a few words so we can share it? Yeah, we'll collect the answers. And I would say, since we are really going to be kicked out here, it's not like we can continue just as we want. I think I'll take over a little bit for the final words, and we definitely stay in touch. Since we are not so many anyhow, we are anyway working together. We can continue on another level. We're going to do this from our perspectives, support that. Thank you so much, guys, for participating here. We'll meet again in the webinar. I think we're going to be back there in a second. And thank you, Jonas. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Zara. Thanks, Oleg, for your great moderation and everything. And thanks everybody for participating. I think we are gradually moving step by step. Every little thing we do, that's the most important thing to share, at least from my point of view, is it's all little stones we put on each other. And we continue, and hopefully you stay with us on the path of C4C. And we'll do our best to share with you the updates and the developments so we can really participate and move on and build on things and knowledge we shared. And I'm already extremely enriched by what I can hear from all of you, and we will keep the red line in our hands, trying to keep you along, and let's move on together. And we propose some more possibilities over the next upcoming months. And yeah, that was Culture for Climate session today, what culture can do, just a little glimpse. Thanks to all of you, and let's meet soon again. We'll send you a summary mail so you don't feel lost after this kind of abrupt finish. It's never going to finish anyway. We move on. And Lena, we'll continue work together. I love that. We'll do this on spot. Thank you so much. It's great. And can we keep, I mean, is our chat going to be erased when we be kicked out of here? Let's save it somehow. I don't know how to do that.
I have saved it already. I have saved it.
Alisa, you're great. All right. I believe in butterflies, you know, that sticks in my mind. No, it's really this image is strong. Vulnerability linked to creativity. Actually, we're not going to be kicked out. That's fantastic. I love that.
Everybody rushes to the door, and then the door stays open. Like,
we have to go proactively back to the boring part. So let's stay here. No, I'm joking. So I hope everybody heard that.
Nobody heard that.
It's still recording, so.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm out.
So let's go back. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Alisa,
thank you.
Take care, everyone. Correct. Lena, Jonas.
Take care, Jonas, Lena,
Ciao.
Zara. Let's see, maybe it's shortly back in this webinar. We have to click where? Here. Yes, we are going back. Goodbye. Do we have to click there? Yes.